Good morning to everyone here and online, and welcome to Cyber Skills and Education, a very key part of the sector competitiveness plan that we released yesterday. So I'm going to introduce a panel very soon. Before I do that, I'd like to just do an acknowledgement of country. So we begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land, and we pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. We extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending here today, both in person and online. So we've got a panel I'm going to introduce, but before we do that, I'm just going to actually go to a pre-recorded message from the Honourable Brendan O'Connor, who's the Minister for Skills and Training, and we'll just have a few words from him and then we'll jump in and introduce the panel. Thank you.
I'm really pleased to be speaking this Australian Cyber Week, and it's great to join you virtually from Canberra. I'd like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people and their elders, past and present, on whose land I'm recording this message. We've never had more awareness of the importance of keeping data safe, or more awareness of how much work there is to be done. The Cybersecurity Centre's annual cyber threat report found 76,000 cybercrimes were committed last year, rising 13% in only 12 months. That's 1 every 7 minutes. This is an indication of the scale of the challenge ahead for us. It's never been more important for organisations and everyday Australians to prioritise their cyber security. Systems held to ransom, millions in lost productivity, stolen trade secrets and eroded business competitiveness, the privacy that's been invaded, the cost of investigation and enforcement, and the money of families and businesses that might be siphoned away in scams. The Institute of Criminology has estimated that the total economic impact of cybercrime in 2019 was $3.5 billion. That figure includes money lost by victims, the cost of rebuilding a cybercrime and prevention. We need to lift our game. It's critical that we build our cybersecurity and digital workforce. We need a pool of skilled workers who can build cybersecurity capability across the economy. The latest skills priority list identifies strong shortages across cybersecurity analysts, architects, coordinators, assessors and advisors, and risk and compliance specialists. And cybersecurity engineers are also in moderate shortage. AustCyber's own sector competitiveness plan forecasts 3,000 fewer cybersecurity workers than required by 2026. Firms want trained experts, but they can't find them. This government has a plan to address a tech skills shortage by reforming the skills sector. We took the first step to a real solution at the Jobs and Skills Summit in September. We're working with the Minister for Industry. We agreed to the Digital and Tech Skill Compact. This compact recognises that we need our key players, government, industry, unions and educators, to work together to ensure workers develop the skills that are critical. We're also ensuring that industry has its say in strategically providing advice to government about the skills that are required and how the VET system can actually deliver those skills. As a government, we've legislated the creation of Jobs and Skills Australia, our expert body on workforce skills. There will be more access to technology and digital qualifications under the government's policy for fee-free TAFE and VET places. We've invested in 2,000 startup loans for entrepreneurs and 1,000 digital traineeships across the public sector. We also plan to invest $15 billion in job-creating loans across a range of advanced infrastructure and manufacturing sectors. These investments are clearly not confined to cybersecurity, but this type of investment will build the skills base of tomorrow. A more digitally literate, technologically advanced economy will widen the pool of workers who can more easily enter the cybersecurity field. Government, industry, unions and educators must work together to confront the shared challenges of skill shortages. I'm grateful to industry for the momentum and enthusiasm I've seen in this space. We hope to match it. Thanks to this event's organisers, AustCyber, for inviting me to share some of my thoughts today. This is a great event and a wonderful initiative. I look forward to collaborating with you all in the future.
Thank you to Minister O'Connor. That makes my job a lot easier. He's pretty much touched on everything we are going to talk about today. So I'll introduce the panel. There's a lot to get through, so I'll just go through each of the speakers here and then we'll jump straight into it. So first, we've got Dr. James Curran, CEO of Grok Academy. Dr. Curran is the CEO of Grok Academy, a charity that combines Grok Learning and the Australian Computer Academy from the University of Sydney, where James was an associate professor in computer science. Grok Academy's mission is to educate all learners in transformative computer skills, knowledge, dispositions, empowering them to meet the challenges and seize the opportunities for the future. Perfect for this panel, especially off the back of what we just heard then. Andrew Eddy, he is the co-founder of Untapped, a for-purpose social enterprise focused on developing neurodiverse employment ecosystem and increase opportunities for autistic individuals. Andrew promotes the Global Neurodiversity Hub and Genius Armory initiatives. So please welcome him. I should get a clap for each of them as we go along. So we'll get a double clap if we could. Those stools aren't too comfortable. They need all the encouragement they can get. So Ikram Akbar, he's right down the end down there, founder at Hackersjack. He helps, well, basically generations or the future generations which are coming through to understand cybersecurity threats and the everyday challenges of cyber. So starting in primary schools, he helps them to learn and employ cutting-edge technology to achieve the objectives both from a school age into secondary and then hopefully into employment down the track. So please welcome Ikram to the panel. Now, Kylie, I like this. It says that besides being an ANZ lead client partner at IBM, it says you're seasoned. So that's interesting. A seasoned leader in technology, consulting growth markets and growth platforms, including cyber, data, AI, and cloud. Kylie has over 25 years' experience, started very young, obviously was at the primary school kick-off there. Thanks to your program, Ikram, well done. International IT, engineering operations, complex delivery and business development experience. So please welcome Kylie to the panel. And Ryan, I'm surprised you've actually given us this much information about you. Ryan McFarlane, Assistant Legal Attaché, Federal Bureau of Investigation, US Embassy. He had to probably check us all out before, he probably knows everyone in the room. Ryan is the Assistant Legal Attaché covering cybercrime for the FBI in Australia, New Zealand and Oceania. Ryan has both investigated lead teams responsible for investigating Eastern European, Chinese and Iranian cyber threats out of Los Angeles and Cleveland field offices. So please welcome Ryan to the panel. So now we're going to kick off. The panel discussion is going to pick up on some of the stuff which was actually in that opener there, about especially the demand for cybersecurity talent here in Australia. There's a few things we're going to cover here, so I'll just give you a bit of a run through and then we'll go point by point. Demand for cybersecurity workers, as we heard in the opener there, will increase to 51,000 or over 51,000 workers by 2026. Some say that could be even higher. So only 48,100 of the mandated roles will be filled. So that's the first point. Based on the projected inflows and outflows from the cybersecurity workforce, by 2026 there'll be a shortage of about 3,000 workers. So between 2022 and 2026, it's expected that 9,500 current cybersecurity workers will also leave the workforce. So this includes people retiring or moving to other industries. Burnout could be a part of that. So this is based on the broader ICT network and not just specifically cyber. 8,300 new cybersecurity workers and 2,400 skilled migrants are expected to join the Australian cybersecurity workforce by that time. The migrant issue is something that we might touch on here as well, if anyone's got an opinion on that. The results are based on our AUCyberExplorer estimates and the sector. So this is the best data sets we have available in the country right now to basically look at this. So in the SCP, where employment estimates were derived from, revenue and value is base added. So AUCyberExplorer is a single source of truth. There is, in the room here, we have some flyers there where you can actually QR code in and get in and have a look at that for the information today for the future of Australian cybersecurity industry. So what I want to do now is just dive in and get you involved as quick as possible because I know we're on limited time and we've got a few questions to cover. We'll free form it. If you want to jump in any time, if someone pop the hand up. And if someone's going too long, I'll allow you guys to just put your hand over their mouth or something like that if required. So I'm too far away. So workforce shortages, major handbrake on growth. The sector forecast of 3,000. As I said, some say it could be higher than that for cybersecurity workers. So this is a question for all, so jump in where required. So it's not news for anyone who's in cybersecurity. We're pretty clear on this one. But what can we do to really grow the cyber pipeline? And how can we do it? So what would you think would be the best way to actually attack that?
I think you've got to start in schools unless you want to have this same conversation every year for the next 30 to 100 years. So whenever I hear numbers saying we need X thousand extra by 2026, it's a continual discussion about the short-term game And I think the conversation we need to be having in addition is how do we get kids from primary school thinking about this? How do we ensure that every Australian, no matter what area they're working in, sees cybersecurity as something that's important regardless of whether they're running a small business or whether they expect to get in a technical role in the future? So I think schools is really where it's at, not surprisingly. And as one of the authors of the Australian Curriculum Digital Technologies, which is where Australian children learn about this, the new version 9 that was released in April explicitly talks about cybersecurity skills and dispositions in a way that nowhere else in the world has got to yet, partly because every few years each country updates their curriculum and we've just done ours. But then the question is, how do you take our 337,000 Australian teachers who honestly know nothing about cybersecurity themselves, how do we support them in delivery of that curriculum content? So the curriculum opens the door, but how do we help teachers walk through it?
Excellent point. That's the other thing, isn't it? It's usually your teachers are teaching you or your parents are teaching you. Not the case because it's fast-tracked. Anyone else want to...
If anything, it's in reverse, right? If we can train our kids, we've actually got a better chance of them taking it home and training gran and grandpa about what to do themselves.
Yeah.
No, it certainly is a difficult thing about how do you get all those teachers trained up, and that's a model we're working with in Victoria. We're working with Quantum Victoria, which is one of the 6 specialist facilities down there that run half and full STEM programs. For pre-pandemic, they were doing 12,000 students a year. Going virtual, they're now doing 80,000 students a year, which is fabulous. And we've been partnering with them on our Genius Armory program, and we're this Friday releasing the cut-down version of Genius Armory pitched at years 9 and 10. And that's really about trying to inject those topics, that interest, increase the level of understanding of cyber risks, but also maybe create interest amongst these people before they start off and go and do home economics or something, to think about a career in STEM and how they might choose those streams during school, and then that could then lead on obviously things at further education. But I think you want to say something about that too.
Hi. The way I look at it, I think we need to have a layered approach, starting with short term, which is 1 to 2 years, which includes helping existing computer science experts who wants to change a field. They have 5 or 7 years working in a certain environment and they want to change. So we can help them come on cybersecurity, and we can offer them, a government can offer them tax-based incentives on that kind of environment. Then we can definitely tap into our immigration program and take a highly skilled experts only for 1 to 2 years. The way I look at it, if we just go back and see what's happening in European Union, most countries have realized that if they have to stay at a level of competitive advantage, they need to have that, then they need to get the best experts in cybersecurity. So what they are doing is they're bringing in on a 1 to 2 or 3 year visa basis experts, and then helping them adjust in the society to be a part of cybersecurity workforce. We can do that as well, and we can link it with a contract where they can work in cybersecurity for at least a minimum of 3 years. So that will help us immediate shortage. Then what we look into it, second thing we can do is we can tap into, we are a part of 5 Eyes. So we can build a platform-based education pool of experts where all these experts who are cybersecurity, and they have got clearance from US, UK, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada, we can share that pool of experts and get help from them. And in the medium term, we really need to market cybersecurity as a future of a course of the future. That is the future. The challenges which we are going to have in terms of post-quantum cybersecurity, we really need to understand that in the next 5 to 10 years, that is going to create a whole new set of challenges. So we really need to market that as a course of futures. It does suffer from historically as a geeky subject. However, we need to change that mindset. And in the long term, I agree with James, if we really want to stay competitive, we need to have a competitive advantage as a nation. We really need to make cybersecurity a third pillar alongside literacy and numeracy. In the past, we have seen countries who have led the world. They were excellent in literacy and numeracy. Unless and until we start to accept that cybersecurity is going to be the third pillar, we are going to be left behind. And also, I believe we need to make it as a part of a long-term strategy, as a part of defense budget, because in the long run, cybersecurity will define our future. How strong we are in terms of defending our not only home network, our mobile network, or our corporate networks. As a nation, if we want to move forward, we need to have that kind of mindset. And if it is not part of sovereign issue, it is going to be a sovereign issue.
Ikram, I reckon you're pretty passionate about this subject. Very well said. Very well said. Now, I'll just get quickly, Kylie, because I've heard you share a story about this previously with your daughters, and then Ryan, just a perspective from the US. If you don't mind, Kylie, do you want to go first, and then Ryan?
Yeah, I'll share that story in a minute, but a thing that comes to mind to me too is the competition and retention issues. At our school, I was pretty proud because we had 2 amazing IT teachers, and they recently got poached by industry. So we can get them in there, but we need to actually have platforms to retain them. And I think that goes to right now, there is a gap. And we do need some kind of platform, so if the children aren't getting it at school, there's those extracurricular lessons that you see, girls that code camps or code do need strengthening in that as well, while we're trying to solve this short-term problem. The story Jason was just referring to was, I'm obviously a cyber trained professional and it's my lifeblood, and I've got 2 girls and a boy. Both my girls started to study IT, both dropped out. Both were getting A's. They did not fit socially. The eldest is very much sporty. She's the school basketball captain. And she just said to me, how do I get an advantage over these boys that have been coding since they were 5 or 6 years of age? And I said, but you're getting A's. And she goes, yeah, but I just don't fit the classroom and I'm one of the few girls. And I had a lot of hope for my next one coming through, who's now 14. And she was also doing really well. And the teachers knew about the first one. So they worked really hard to try and keep her as sticky as possible. And they gave her really cool creative websites and things that she could do and games. And in the end, it came again down to the fact that I don't have a social fit in my classroom. I don't gel with the people in my classroom. So that was more of a social indicator there. So she had the ability. She has parents who both work in IT, a parent that works in cybersecurity, and yet we couldn't keep her sticky, and she was good at it. So I do have hopes that my son might come through and actually third time lucky, but it is sad. I do have to say though that Rachel Noble, who's obviously the Director General of ASD, went to our school quite recently. She does the rounds of schools at times and said, look, don't worry about it. And she said to me, don't worry about it. There are other avenues. There are other ways that they may get into it, and they may not want to do that at all. But I fear that we're losing this pipeline, and it concerns me.
Excellent. No, thanks for sharing that, because I think it's an important story, and be interested really in your perspective as well, eh?
I guess I will follow up on a couple of different points, but I think the main one that I'd like to make is that I think it's the responsibility of both the government and private sector to come develop that pipeline aggressively. They need to, we as the government or as the private sector, we need to make a pretty significant effort to work our way down to where our pipeline is going to begin. Programs that start early in school are very important, but I think that we need to help develop both the specific work-related functions that we're looking for constantly within our organizations, and then we also have to put ourselves out there as mentors and help develop both the culture and the passion that is essential for the technology roles that we're trying to build.
That's all excellent points. It's funny because it's almost, if you go and work in healthcare because you want to help other people, I think cybersecurity has a lot of that as well. You often do it because you can help a lot of people. So when we look at the other end of the scale on that note, enrolments need to increase drastically, obviously, when we're going at the other end. So we've just talked about we need to start that talent early, but there's people now that are probably ready to pop or get into the market, don't know how to go, don't know how to get started. What's one thing that each of you could suggest that we might be able to do to help get more people into the education process of cybersecurity right now?
Look, I might kick off with that because I actually moved over to cybersecurity from engineering. So I used to build roads and bridges, right? Now I do something completely different. And I think it's really important to get involved in those mentoring programs. I myself am very active in the Australian Computer Society and the Australian Women's Security Network with the mentoring and coaching. But I also encourage people mid-career to have a think about coming over. And you don't have to be a coder. We do need more coders. We do need more people that are technically proficient. However, we also need analysts. We need people that understand understand the geopolitical tensions. We need people that can go into a security operations centre and have a different perspective or a different viewpoint in that analytics of what's coming through. So I would encourage people to go out there and really think about, not just for yourselves, but for others around you, could those skills that they have actually transfer, and then tap into a formal mentoring program, because there's quite a few out there now.
Anyone else?
Okay. I think we need to increase scholarships at university level, need to give more scholarships. And what it really does, scholarships do attract maximum very high grade caliber students. And second thing, I have quite a revolutionary thought on that. How about offering hacks-free degrees for next 3 to 5 years in Australia? Now, that is different, because what it means is if somebody wants to do a degree in next 3 to 5 years,
That's a great point. Yeah.
primarily in cybersecurity, then there are hacks that should be eliminated. But it doesn't stop here. We get them to sign a bond where they, for next 3 to 5 years, they must work in cybersecurity field. At the end of the day, if you're going to get something of that value of $75,000 that is going to be wiped off, then you need to give back something to the community. And the best way is to work for 5 years. However, if you decide to move away within those 5 years, then the debt goes back and you have to pay for it. Now, here government can say that budgetary issue will come in. I checked it. There's $164 billion sitting in our future fund. And we should be taking something from there and offering it. And the real value which we are going to get in terms of offering something like that, it can really solve this problem. The second thing, we can bundle in gender diversity into it. And the way we do it for female and for minority groups, they can come in and take this offer. They only have to be in the industry for only 3 years instead of 5 years. And historical data has shown most female and minority groups, if they decide to take a career path of this nature, they actually stay a lot longer than 3 years.
Yeah, I think on the diversity piece, it'd be interesting to hear about the neurodiversity part and that equation as well.
Yeah, just building on that, there's a whole untapped talent pool out there that just don't make it to university or TAFE. Even if they get there, they don't make it through. They drop out. And even if they get their degree, they don't get work experience. So they just don't stack up and don't stand a chance. So nearly 5 years ago, we started the Neurodiversity Hub initiative, which is about working with universities and TAFEs about creating more inclusive programs for neurodivergent students. So I'm talking about autism, ADH and dyslexia and so on. So far, we've had 11 universities and TAFE New South Wales join. We're talking to others. We've got nearly 20 universities overseas that have joined, which we didn't expect, but there's a lot of interest in the US particularly. But it would be great to have all the other universities, the other 28 universities in Australia join up. And so if anyone has any connections with them and can influence them, please. This is how we can make the whole university experience more inclusive. And there's a whole group out there. Yesterday, in the session yesterday afternoon, they're talking about diversity, and they focused very much on leadership, culture and inclusion, but that was directed at gender. The same things apply to neurodiversity, and we've really got to crack this.
Yeah, it's a good point, I think, and it's not to say that getting more females in isn't an important bit. It is, absolutely. And there's also that piece that we need to add on.
Yeah, we need to be aware, then accepting, and then appreciative. And this is the process we've got to go through.
Great point. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, can I disagree with a couple of points? So Kylie said before
No,
that...
we're not allowed to disagree.
We're not allowed to disagree? I thought we would shake this up a
Can I
little
just
bit.
say we're going to pick the female to disagree with?
No, I'm going to disagree with multiple of you, don't worry.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think the first thing, Kylie, you said that the 2 great computing teachers were snaffled from your school. The problem is the vast majority of our 9,500 schools don't have a computing teacher. What they have is a woodwork teacher who is grudgingly teaching tech mandatory in New South Wales to students that then need to make their career choices on the back of a woodwork teacher saying, well, I don't know anything about computing, here we go. So I think
wooden computers.
Right, so I think our big problem first is that schools need support. And the way that I think of this is technology is a rare industry where people love sharing what they do and they love doing it recreationally. I don't know any recreational lawyers, I don't know any recreational accountants, but people in tech like to share what they do. And what we need is 9,500 technologists across all areas, cybersecurity included, Let's say, I'm going to pick a school, I'm going to be a contact for that school so that anything they want to try, or if the woodwork teacher, who in many cases are trying really hard to do a good job of it, but they just don't have the background themselves to give that support. That's number one. And the other point I want to disagree with is I think there are places that scholarships can help, but at the end of a pipeline that is already incredibly thin and tight, adding scholarships doesn't actually change the flow very much from schools. But I think, for example, industry professionals who are interested in changing careers, that's actually a much bigger risk to say, I've got a family and a mortgage and whatever else, am I going to stop and study for 12 months? That is the pool that is actually very broad and open. And if either individual organisations or government were to attack that particular bit and say, we're going to give you a 12 months conversion program and we'll cover your cost of doing that plus your salary, then we're talking, I think that's a much bigger part of the pipeline.
And Ryan, did you want anything on this one? Or
One point I will add is I think that employers need to be open-minded and find non-traditional candidates for positions, right? As there's obviously a severe shortage with the specific skills that we're looking for, but typically the most important thing that we see is someone who's willing to passionately learn about the subject. And there's a balance there, don't get me wrong, right? You're going to need technical heavy hitters on your team, but to bring in other folks that are coming in from non-traditional streams into security teams can change the dynamics in some pretty important ways and get different perspectives on some of the things that we're working, right? And in that process, what you will find is when you have that right team mix, everyone will upskill folks in areas where they could use some help. And I've seen that on a number of teams that I've been lucky enough to be a part of.
yeah, I think you're right. You need to balance that variety, the diversity, whatever it comes in a team. It just can't be robotically the same across the board, especially when you think about the human element of cybersecurity being such a key part of it, how the manipulation of another human being is used, which is often outsmarting someone in that sense as well. So the balance of teams would be good. And that's actually a good lead into the next part, because we're looking at, with the plan, we're looking with over sort of 8,000 higher education enrolments in 2022. 5,000 students were enrolled in the VET programs and another 3,200 at universities. So are we getting the distribution right between the university and the sort of TAFE sector with regard to the education? The TAFE tends to be starting off at the Cert 4 level, and the university tends to be, or seeing itself on the other side of the fence. It's such a long timeline, even if you do go Cert 4. What are we doing, or what can we do better to get that balance right, to get the right people into the right sort of programs as quickly as possible?
I'll take that. I think the ideal way is to collaborate. We have bad actors on the other side. They are collaborating it. Why can't we collaborate? I see Mona here from Cyber Marvel. She's doing a great job. We should be taking that. James is doing a great job. E-Safety Commissioner is doing a great job in the school sector. So definitely we need to collaborate more and more. Moving forward, we need to develop more micro-credential courses. And these courses has to be industry specific. We should be developing for finance sector. We should be developing for health sector, school sector, you name it, and you can develop specific to that industry, which can bundle in all the cybersecurity problems. And then if there is 10 courses on offer, you really need to, whoever finishes them, give them a certain certification after a certain time, where they can go if they need to change a profession. So in health sector, there are a lot of nurses who have done enough nursing and they want to change. So if we can actually educate them in the short run over next 1 year, that they can do half a day course, 10 courses, they are able to get a certain certification, and maybe they can actually become a part of the workforce in the future. So that's some of the thoughts I have.
Yeah, so looking at other areas where there's skill sets that we could actually bring over, and you think that'll shorten the timeline of education?
Yeah. And more micro-credential courses, because this thing is not going to go away. The problem is there, it's changing, it's very dynamic in its nature, so we need to basically develop courses as we move forward.
Kylie?
Yeah, I have to say that one of the first things I did when I became head of cybersecurity at IBM was go to the employment portal and remove the requirement to have a degree. That really annoyed me, and I discovered that somebody had applied who I knew was particularly talented, and they couldn't get past the system. It just automatically rejected them. So that was the first thing I did. The second thing is I really do believe, like you said, Ikram, about the micro credentials being really important. And to as far as I was giving advice to quite a young cocky student who had done Capture the Flag, and he'd come second, I think, in Australia for it. And he was telling me he was the smartest person in the room and he was going to go to a really top university. And I was probably a bit naughty, and I said to him, I probably wouldn't employ you. I would probably employ someone that went to TAFE that had micro-credentials who could actually go straight in there to a security operations centre, and I could use them from day one. I said, and you're going to look around when you're working for someone like our tech company or other companies, and there's going to be other smartest persons in the room with you. You are not, you might be the smartest person in the room, in your school, in your environment, but there's a lot of them out there. It was really cutting to him, and I did feel a bit sorry later and spoke to the school about you possibly just follow him up. But there was this real cockiness. I'm going to go to the top university and get a top degree, and I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to be a fabulous cyber hacker, and I'm just going to be like in the movies. And I was like, no, at the end of the day, I'm going to employ the person who's hands-on tools, knows what they're talking about, and is like humble, right? To sit there and listen and learn in your first few years, particularly in the workforce. So regardless of whether it's a uni degree, I'm not against uni degrees. I went back and retrained and got a cybersecurity degree. But for me, it's that humility, wanting to learn. So I don't really care where the actual certificate, diploma, degree comes from. It's about how the person uses it and what their attitude is in implementing it.
Excellent points.
Can I just add something quickly? Education is full of silos. Universities versus TAFE, faculties within universities versus each other. In the real world, learning is never like that. You learn the next thing you need as quickly as you can do. And so we do have a snobby separation in Australia between TAFE and broader vet education versus universities. But we also have problems across the universities. We don't have enough academics in Australia to teach cybersecurity in all of the programs we need. Many of them already semi-borrow from industry partners to even satisfy the courses that are already being delivered. One problem we've got is that you should be able to do top quality cybersecurity units of study at any university you're in, shared online in some form or other. And so the distinction really between where TAFE ends, in quotes, and where universities start should pretty much cease to exist. But of course, universities and the TAFE sector are both fairly fossilised in their approach to all of this. How many years are we going to talk about micro-credentialing? I bet I'll be on another panel in a decade where we're still discussing how we'll do micro-credentialing. In the meantime, everyone else is just learning. We've got to work out how to do that in Australia.
Again, excellent points. And that's another part of it, isn't it? That cybersecurity, because it is an ever-evolving and changing threat, it's not a study that you can do and say, I've done my study, I've got my degree, I'm just going to go work and I'll never have to study again. You really need to keep that continuous learning, probably more so than many other professions. Accounting is pretty much, it's accounting, not to knock accountants. It comes to a certain thing. There's things that change with legislation and things you've got to keep on top of. But cybersecurity, with that ever-evolving and changing metric with technology, with quantum computing, AI coming in, machine learning, etc., it just changes all the time. What are we going to do that we get this part right, but then it's also that continuation also that's coming off the back of that, so...
Yeah, and I could add to this other stuff that's been said, but I think it is important that there's more articulation happening, right from all the Cert 3, Cert 4 through into diploma degree. And we're working with Victoria University in Melbourne in a partnership there, and love working with Jo Cave and what she's doing around that course there. But the other thing is to really help people find out what they don't know, that this is a real opportunity, that there's these huge opportunities in cyber. And we've got this program we've developed for autistic individuals called Genius Armory, which is a fundamental set of cyber training to help them understand the opportunity and see if that's something of interest. And we found incredible aha moments with them when we explained to them what the opportunity is in cyber and what they could do in terms of getting a great job that pays well. And the other great thing about those individuals, that cohort, is that they're very loyal. So if someone comes to them with 10 grand or 20 grand, they're not going. They're going to stay, and we get this incredible level of retention and loyalty happening, and these very honest and the people who can see patterns, they have great memories, they can focus for long periods, and I can list a whole lot of things that you'll go, yeah, that would make a great cybersecurity person. So there's a real opportunity there, and we just need to help them understand what the opportunity is and then create those pathways and inclusive environments at TAFE and university for them to thrive.
That's a great point. And also the money aspect of it, because earlier this year, obviously, the government, the Liberal government, the last budget in May, had the Red Spice program, which was $9.9 billion. And from memory, it was about $6.8 billion, I think, was putting to offensive cyber to build teams. So From an ASD point of view, this has happened so many times, I've seen it, and they'll go and train these people, and you touched on the money thing, they'll get offered by, to say, a Big Four, extra 30 grand or something like that, and they've just been trained in the Australian government for a team specific for our offensive capabilities. They get offered something, they go, and then basically get their services sold back in again. It's like, what do we do around that? Because the money thing does become a part in cybersecurity, you know, for people, and that's what I'm glad to touch on. I actually wouldn't mind just getting your, because being US-based, how does it get handled there? Does the same thing happen? Do they get drawn out, or how do you do it over there?
Absolutely. Retention continues to be a huge issue for the U.S. government at large when it comes to cybersecurity skills. And frankly, I think that's okay. I like to see folks leave government service, head into the private sector, because it strengthens an understanding of both sides of that equation. And within cybersecurity, we have to work as a team. The government cannot do it alone. The private sector cannot do it alone. And it helps to mix employees that have perspectives from both sides of that fence. That being said, it also is, it hurts our mission, and we have to look at ways to compete also with the private sector and to retain our employees and to compensate them in ways that make sense and that are doable for the government. That being said, though, I think that Red Spice, for example, is a huge opportunity for folks that are looking to get into the cybersecurity field here. Having the level of training that comes along with the government service is invaluable. I look back at my career and wouldn't switch it out for the world. I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I think of 3 or 4 days when I wasn't happy to go into work. It's one of those things that you're going to have with that government service. You're going to have and be involved in things that you just can't get anywhere else.
That's excellent. And Kylie, and this, I'll let the rest of the panel come in here, but coming from, just say, the Australian Armed Forces, and is there a way we could use that as a better pathway to get people exiting out of there? I know we're sort of looking at AustCyber to do like a national node network, and one of the places we were in the other week was in Townsville, and they said a lot of people that get based there end up staying in Townsville. So they'll exit out of the forces, love it up there, why wouldn't you? Great weather. And they end up staying up there, and then could we do a pathway or make that as a way of actually transitioning people with those sort of skill sets into cyber, and then maybe starting that pathway there to graduate into the community afterwards?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think the biggest issue there is my family's got quite a few military people as well, and I was at a barbecue a few weeks ago and my cousin sidled up to me, who's ex-military, done 3 tours, and he said to me, "Is it real, this stuff about cyber? Is it actually real?" And I said, "Yes, it is." And he goes, "Oh, I just thought it was this beat up." Yeah. And then he didn't say anything else. And then about 2 days later, his wife rang me and she said, "So you were talking to Mark and he was telling me that you said this cyber stuff was real." And I said, "Yes." And she goes, "I might go into it. What do you think?" And I said, "Yeah, okay, that's fantastic." And I gave her some leads. So he was still a little hesitant about it and about how his skills would transfer. So I think we have to be much clearer about that. And there are some public sector organisations that have those programs that show them what they can then do in industry, and they partner with industry. And I know my husband's work are particularly good at this, where they set up a hub and they'll have, what can you do in IT, what can you do in cyber, what can you do in change management, what can you do in program management, just to show them what that pathway might look like. So there are pathways, things out there, but to the actual sapper, corporal, sergeant on the ground, perhaps less realistic for them. So the officers can probably see what that transition might look like, but I don't think we're going down deeper into the ranks and really explaining this is a thing, and yes, you are valuable and we can use you.
Yeah, so that's the identification, and looking at other industries as one off there. Do you think, though, and open to all panel, that if we get the schooling early enough with programs like Hackersjack and other programs, and the e-safety, all the other stuff, and we can combine that and make a program that we can actually have in schools, because even just teaching the basics might be enough to trigger a kid to go, actually, you know what, I like this cyber stuff, it's actually quite interesting, because we're not touching it. And I use that analogy, it's like we give kids the access to devices in primary school, and sometimes younger, to the internet, unfettered, unprotected. It'd be almost like throwing your kids the keys to the car without a driving lesson and saying, get out on the road and knock yourself out, or worse. So if we go back to that schooling system and that mechanism, training teachers that could even convert across, how much of an impact do you think that'll make if we really embed it in schools as part of the curriculum, like brushing your teeth, popping a seatbelt on when you get to a car, cybersecurity?
I think that's an excellent question that we literally don't know the answer to, because no country has done this properly enough to be able to point to and say this
Could we lead it though, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And look, if we can't get this right in 2022, where we've had 2 massive hacks that are in the newspaper every single day for, what are we at, months now, and we've just gone through a period where everyone can demonstrate that in white-collar jobs you can sit anywhere in the country and do the job, if we've got we've got a new curriculum that explicitly talks about cybersecurity, if we can't sort this out over the next couple of years with a new government federally that's listening, then honestly, if we're still talking about this in 10 years, it's our own bloody fault, because we really do need to sort this out, and this is the right year to be having those conversations, because no school teacher now could claim that I didn't know anything about cybersecurity, I didn't know this was important, because what's our tally now? What portion of the Australian adult population is in one of those 2 hacks? We must have 50% of Australian teachers that have either got an email from Optus or Medibank, right? So what are we going to do with that so that teachers then go, oh, I've got to do more about this myself, and school principals go, I've got to send my staff on PD because this new curriculum's coming up.
And that's right, this is not just about awareness training, and this is not just about career guidance. This is a combination. There's no reason why, in finding out more about how to be cyber safe and cyber hygiene and all those terms, you don't suddenly find out about how exciting this is and how many opportunities there can be. But I'm sure you got something to say as well.
The way we have seen, definitely, I agree with you, James. We need to start early as grade 1, 2, or 3. The legal age to open an account on social media is 13. And the habits which have been developed up until that stage, they're going to stay with you. The problem with us as adults is we are unable to control our addiction to devices because we are old. We have developed certain habits and we are not going to change. However, we can help kids to develop these habits in a way where they can apply these cyber hygiene habits right from before they actually get onto social media, before they start to get control of their devices. So that's something there. Then on top of that, we are currently working with one of the top 10 public universities in the United States, where we are developing a micro-credential program for a certain industry specific to test it over the next 12 months, how we can help that industry overcome with these challenges of cybersecurity. And I plan to, hopefully we'll be able to bring that to Australia as well over the next 12 months. And we'll be testing it here as well.
Can I just say, the kids don't get it, right? I've got an 11-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 17-year-old. Do you know how many conversations I have where I go, do not Snapchat me? And they go, oh, but it disappears. It's on a server somewhere, honey. No, it's okay. Don't take a photo of your brother without his permission. No, Mum, it's okay. And there's this thing at the moment where it captures you. I've forgotten what it's called. You might in the audience know, where it comes through once a day and then it captures where you are and you take a quick photo of where you are. And my daughter did it the other day in my study. And I was like, no, I've got things all over the wall that I don't want anyone to see. So I went ballistic. And she goes, you're overreacting, Mum. So they've got a mum that works in national security and they don't get it.
Yeah,
so
no, I agree with you. My background is I'm a father of 3 boys. And I saw how technology has come into their lives. The eldest one used it when he was in year 8. Middle one used it when he was in grade 5. And the youngest one he was using in grade 3. When I looked at it, the actual impact of technology and how it's changing their behavior, at that particular stage, back in 2019, I was offered a PhD scholarship to do research in blockchain technology, which I actually decided not to take it and decided to build this platform for my own child. And then when I realized the problem was really big, during the pandemic, I decided to build this whole platform. And I agree with you, kids actually just don't understand. But this is where you really need to put a school-based program where school can actually take the ownership. Mom and dad, they themselves need a lot of cyber training, actually, as a matter of fact. So going back to, if we can put it and embed it in school program, then within school, teachers have a much more control how they actually deliver it and make sure these kids learn these basic concepts. So it is a battle, but it's not going to go away. So we really need to work fast, work hard, and come up with new solutions.
Can I just add one thing? First of all, it's almost impossible as a parent to teach your child anything. So, Kylie, I think you should give yourself a bit of a break. But secondly, I think what kids need to see from an attacker's perspective, how their information can be collected and used. And that's the approach that we've taken with our school cybersecurity challenges. We created a fake phone. We hired a bunch of 20 actors to pretend to be friends with each other. They're not technologists, so that was really easy. And then the kids who are doing this activity in school, they sleuth out various pieces of information in this fake world. And the kind of stuff that we hear, conversations in class, is things like, oh, my mum did that yesterday. Posting a photo of an 18th birthday. Mum, how's your privacy settings on your Facebook account? Who have you actually given my date of birth to? Those are the kind of things that, honestly, if you tell a teenager no, it's pretty much a, I'm going to do it. So we need to look at an approach where children actually see from the other perspective, and then they discover there are jobs in this. I once had a couple of Year 11 girls come up to me after we'd run a session in this fake social media world where they said, can we show you our sleuthing guide? And they actually had this Word document that they'd been adding to of all of the different ways that you can find out information about people online. And they didn't know that there were actually jobs in places like banks and elsewhere when new execs join, that this is exactly the process that they go through. And they're like, this is amazing. I get to continue doing this. So I think there are approaches that we can take. But I think we also need to keep experimenting. We need to run programs, we need to evaluate them rigorously, and we need to keep trying as many different things as possible. Otherwise, we will still be having this conversation in another decade.
Ryan, did you want to say something?
The one point that I will make is that the problem's not going away. Everybody understands that, right? And I think it's debatable how much worse it's going to get before it potentially gets better. So invest, right? We need to invest in the space. You're not going to waste investment here, whether it's at the primary level, whether it's at the undergrad level or the postgrad level, or whether it's outside the education system. We are going to get our bang for every dollar that we put into this, and the problem is only going to get worse as we become more and more dependent on technology, and it continues to have a bigger influence on how we live day to day.
So how do we do it now? Now we're looking, looking at Australia's specific situation with the recent incidents that have occurred. How do we get a message that goes broad-ranging? So we're talking for broad-ranging education. Now, I've used a few times that slip, slop, slap campaign for sun cancer in Australia was very successful. Bit of an earworm there. I propose maybe even something as basic as, you can get free password managers, you can get multi-factor authentication updates when available. They're all free things to do. I don't know how we get those three into a slip, slop, slap type campaign, but how do we get that message across, or something even as simplistic as that? Now, before everyone jumps into, I know that people say you can hack a password manager, or there's ways around multi-factor authentication, etc. But it's be like saying, well, don't bother putting locks on your house because someone kicked your door in, or don't put an alarm up or a camera or anything like that. We need to take some measures. Something's better than nothing because most people are doing nothing. What can we do in that scenario to get a broader range sort of conversation around cybersecurity and some basics in place that people obviously don't have?
I think a key one is to get people really aware of what PII they're giving out and whether it's needed. And I know we often just automatically fill out forms. And I do remember thinking my father was rather cantankerous back in the 80s when he would just go, why do they need to know that? They don't need to know that. And he wouldn't fill stuff in, and he'd have these conversations with people. And I think I went the opposite. I thought, I don't want to be having these cantankerous conversations with people. So I just started filling in all the forms. Now I've realised you don't give that information. If you don't think it's absolutely necessary, then why should they have it? And what systems have they got it on? And I do think that people now are starting to think I'm a little cantankerous, and I can excuse it by saying I work in cyber. But yeah, I ask people, why do you need that? Why is that a mandatory field? I might just do an XX on it instead, and then they'll follow me up afterwards. So I think industries and companies need to really think about what data they're collecting as well, and that we need to have that really true look at what are we willing to share, because I think we need to assume we've been breached. We need to assume that information is out there, and we need to be really careful with what information they actually hold.
That's good. Anyone else?
Well, it's really on both sides, because it's what you give, but also if a company takes that data, they've just taken on a whole lot of cost. Do they really understand what it's going to cost them for each piece of data they take? Because they've got to protect that, or else they're going to be open to a whole lot of things, including damaged image, as well as any fines they're going to get. So we've got to look at that on both sides.
And for how long? I mean, I haven't been an Optus customer for years and years. Why on earth do they still have my data? And I think that's another big part of the conversation, is that we should be expiring users, PII, as rapidly as we can. If there are cases where there's legislation that kind of pseudo requires data to be held for longer, then I think we need to reinterrogate that legislation in the kind of broader risk that is, the profile of that risk has changed. And I think, honestly, government also needs to kick organisations like Optus and Medibank a hell of a lot harder when these things happen, so that other organisations go, we're not taking it seriously enough because we're really going to get hurt, not just in public opinion, but more broadly by government regulation and etc. And if we don't.
What we really need to do is, certainly over the next 10 years, we need to have huge reforms in our education system, including ICT, STEM, and computer sciences and cybersecurity. Reason being, these next 10 years will be defining years. Depending on, considering the technologies which are coming in, they will define where would we be as a nation in the next 50 years. So we really need to reform our education system.
Excellent. So I'll get everyone here to give the panel a round of applause before we go to Q&A. So has anyone here online got any questions? We've got some online. Thank you. But I'll go in the room and then I'll hit there. Thank you.
Yeah, you've talked heavily about the need for increasing the number of students throughout high schools and universities. But what role do you think industry needs to take within this as well? I work at Macquarie University, and we get a number of students who would love to work within this field. But when they come out and they start looking at job applications, they want all their certifications plus 5 years experience for the entry-level role. And there's a number of good companies within Australia and Sydney particularly that offer these kinds of on-job training for students, but it's just not enough. And what role do you see industry in the future taking, or how we can change industry to start taking more students as they come out of university?
Look, I think the first thing is you've got to invest, right? For too long across the whole tech sector has kept complaining to government, complaining to universities, rather than going, we have to become partially education organisations ourselves. Wants perfect 5-year experience grad with not too much experience so that they're still flexible when they join an organisation. Companies need to realise they have to start making those people rather than necessarily finding them or just fighting each other and adding another 30K to their salary every time they do. And I would say it more broadly too, that I'd challenge every company in the cybersecurity broad ecosystem to think how much of our staff are spending time contributing to growing the pipeline in all ways, whether that's mentoring programs, whether that's supporting universities in the delivery of cybersecurity skills and dispositions, or in my case, in the school sector.
And I think that's right. I think companies need to take a much more comprehensive approach that, yeah, at one level they're going to be in the shark tank trying to pay people more to get them to come across. But at another level, they need to be more strategic to look long-term, how do we build that talent and bring them in? So in years to come, it's going to be less of an issue and there's less of the time spent in the shark tank and more about having your homegrown resource, which might then go somewhere else. But that's the way it goes, and then you get some from somewhere else and it works together.
Yeah, I would like to add here, industry needs to take ownership of the problem and be part of the solution. And the best way to do is if they can open their doors to intern program and they say there are X number of universities offering undergraduate degrees in Australia, so we are able to take X number of interns. There are 3 months from November, December, January, and February where there are these students who are not doing anything. Companies can take them on board, help them understand, and have spoken to a number of students at universities. They would love to be part of the intern program. It's big in the United States. Why can't it be big in Australia?
Yeah, they're good points. Because that came up a few times online as well, that same question. So thanks for that question. That was a very good one.
I'll just add to that. I don't have a question, but I've got a comment. So a pathways program, similar to what you said about internships. So I know Cybersecurity New South Wales have a traineeship program. We've got a trainee. So I'm from New South Wales Department of Education, and I know James and Ikram as well. But thank you for your question. I think educational organisations need to have, industry organisations need to have a pathways program. And we are certainly at New South Wales Education looking to develop one. Excuse me, my size, or if he's listening to this, I'm not allowed to talk about it too much. I don't know about it too much. I only know that they're working on it. So if we can do it, and with our slightly smaller budget as compared to some private organizations out there, I'm sure IBM can do it, like a Pathways program. And I know that Cybersecurity New South Wales already have a traineeship program, so talk to them. I know that also Western Sydney University, Iflana, the professor there for cybersecurity and behavior, she asked a question on LinkedIn the other day, similar to what you just said. And I think the problem is there and the solution is there. We just need to find a way to implement it.
Thank you. I'm just going to grab one offline because this one's actually quite interesting, and it actually came up yesterday, but this was offline, so I'd like to bring it in here. So as demand increases for security cleared talent, so this is the other part of the equation as well. Any thoughts on initiating the security clearance process under the grad level through a collab between just say uni and agency in addition to basic education? Because that does take a while. The security clearance part's like we need security clearance, but then that clearance process can take a long time and be a delay of saying perfect person for the job, needs security clearance, can sometimes take up to a year. What do we do there?
Look, I think there just needs to be tolerance. That person is what in the industry we call not able to be billable. We get our grads in, they automatically go through security clearance for the baseline, which takes about 6 to 8 weeks, which is equivalent to a bit like a police check. So we just have to be tolerant. We put them through 2 to 3 weeks of training, then they do some shadowing, and there's no expectation for them to have to be billable from day one. So I think that's something that other organisations could look at. I know I'd worked in Big Four before, and they had done the same. I think it was a 3-month where I was before that they didn't actually need to be billable, and they waited, and then as soon as they got their baseline, it's you need to go to the next level. The real challenge is you need a project, so that the government requirement is they actually need a sponsor and a project. So you can't just give it out to a student. They actually have to be nominated. You are working on this, and there is a person in the public service that is sponsoring that person. So there's a lot of trust involved as well.
Yeah, that's it's been an issue for a while, and when there was the visa issue and all the other stuff, that actually got pushed out even further, and there was a big influx of people requiring security clearance, which bumped that out a bit. So yeah, if we could try and flatten that out a bit, that would actually be quite helpful, because I know personally from, especially speaking to cyber recruiters, I said that is a tripping point quite often in the process as well. In the US, is a
Yeah, so I can't speak intelligently to how Australia does that aspect of their hiring, but within the U.S., our clearance process has a pretty significant lead time, and we try to bake that into our programs. For the FBI specifically, we have intern programs where we are eyeing candidates as early as we can within that process, getting them into the pipeline, and then once they're cleared and they're able to contribute, we try to keep them throughout their university span. So we'll have them, even to keep their clearance, they're working a couple of hours while they're actually during their terms where they're back at school, so that we can maintain that clearance process through the entire lifetime of their education.
Excellent. Just if there's no more in the room, I'm just going to grab just 2 more and then I'll just wrap up. And because one that came through here was about international students coming from higher studies to Australia with years of international experience, unable to get any sort of work experience here in Australia or get into jobs. So, that working restriction, I wonder if there's any current plans or anything we can do on that front. And the other flip side of that was exploring the grey market. So there's so many retirees who have reasonably strong tech skills and could be good at filling gaps and probably more into that routine than just say some of the younger people. There's a sort of a 2-parter there, but just to finish off, I'd be interested to see if that could be a way of covering stuff off.
I know that every Uber driver that I encounter was usually an international person. And as soon as I see, yesterday I was wearing a little Australian Computer Society badge. I got grilled like nothing else. I have to remember to take that off. But yeah, it's a real problem.
Yeah, your average taxi driver has a Master of IT in Sydney.
Yeah.
And every time when I say I'm an academic was an academic at a university, you have a whole conversation about who came here, did a Masters of IT, couldn't get a job or got a job for a short period of time, didn't really feel supported in various ways and moved to taxis. Given that Uber's eating taxis alive, I think there's an obvious market there specifically, but more broadly, all of this is about flexibility. Right? All of the diversity is about a flexibility and breaking down sets of assumptions. Again, the urgency is now. We just have to push harder on those things and know that once we've got a wider range of people involved, international students, whoever, that we have to invest more in them to make them have the skills and dispositions that we want.
Yeah, excellent. So again, I'll just do some closing remarks here and then we'll thank the panel and wrap up, and we've got some food out here ready to go, so if you're hungry I won't hold you any longer. But look, we've heard multiple times here today about the forecast that we're going to have 3,000 fewer security jobs. So AustCyber's partnered with Microsoft and a leading education training provider, MEGT, TAFE New South Wales, CIT, Prodigy Learning, to provide a unique and credible pathway for budding cybersecurity professionals So the program offers to support and help companies' entry-level trainees build a rewarding career in the sector, regardless of age, background or experience, and that's a good lead into what we were just talking about there. The program focuses on building a diverse workforce and encourages participation by women, veterans, First Nations people, neurodivergent people and other minority groups. So we have candidates who have been through the boot camp and are currently looking for traineeships, so looking for sort of people to sponsor them into the workplace. So to find out more, just Google Cyber Security Microsoft Traineeship Program and you can get some more information on there. Also, I'd just like to obviously thank the audience here and both online, also our sponsors. Thanks again for the team to organising today. It's run beautifully, and thank you to the beautiful crowd, and please again thank our wonderful panel for their expertise.